Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper Vase Odin, and today we'll be doing an overview of Delta Green the role-playing game and the Agent's Handbook. Delta Green by ArcDream Publishing is a role-playing game of modern Lovecraftian horror. The game in its current iteration was created by Dennis Detwiller, Christopher Gunning, Shane Ivey, and Greg Stoltz. The original game was created by Dennis Detwiller, Adam Scott Glancy, and John Scott Tynes. Some people compare Delta Green to Call of Cthulhu and describe it as a modern-day version of that game. The mechanics are similar, and it's influenced heavily by the Cthulhu mythos and Lovecraftian lore, but I think this game is much different than Call of Cthulhu. First, let me explain what Delta Green is. Delta Green is basically a government conspiracy that directly combats unnatural incursions that threaten to reveal man's true place in the universe and end humanity forever. Delta Green players are called agents, and unlike investigators from Call of Cthulhu, are usually part of the government conspiracy. Most agents work for another branch of the federal government and secretly perform Delta Green missions while trying to maintain a normal life otherwise. Delta Green agents, although they know that the unnatural exists, are mostly kept in the dark by their superiors, usually for their own safety and sanity. Merely knowing of the existence of the unnatural does not grant one expertise in all things mythos, so most Delta Green agents are as shocked by what they encounter as those who have not been exposed to the mythos. The Game Master is called the Handler, and like most role-playing games, the Handler controls everything that is not an agent. They weave the stories and paint each scene for agents to immerse themselves in. The Handler controls all other non-player characters. Delta Green is a D100 game, and is mostly skill-based. This means that the better your skill is at something, the more information you can get from a particular investigation. For example, a low computer science skill may allow you to hack a person's email, while a higher skill in the same stat may let you get into all of their social media accounts in addition to hacking into their email. The game keeps things simple, and when your agents are not in a dire situation, their skill value is used to determine outcomes without rolling. This allows better immersion with minimal interruptions to roll dice. Dice is pretty much only rolled when things begin to get very serious. Combat is simple too, and deadly. The game makes it a point to emphasize that combat always has a cost, whether it's permanent injury, death, or the loss of an agent's humanity. Delta Green is one of the most horrifying games I've ever played. Maybe it's the way the game uses the mythos mostly to set the tone, and humanity is the true antagonist. After all, it's mankind's own desire for power and significance that compels them to seek out the mythos. The modern-day setting helps the horror as well. I found it hard to keep games set in the 1920s and 1930s from getting too pulpy. It's proved difficult, and maybe it has something to do with being so far removed from that world of speakeasies, prohibition, and mobsters. On the other hand, my group and I have found it easy to truly immerse ourselves in the world of Delta Green, as most scenarios feel so real and close to home. It's usually at the final act of an operation where things take a more fantastical turn, and by then, we're so attached to the world we've come to know that it's truly horrifying to see it threatened by some unnatural force we barely understand, and to barely be able to do anything about it. Delta Green is described as a story about the end of humanity, about mankind being a speck in the vast seas of infinity, and about the knowledge that the fight could never be truly won, only kept at bay a little longer. It's really a fantastic game. Everything you need to get started playing Delta Green is in the Agent's Handbook. The book starts with a brief introduction into the world of Delta Green. The first chapter goes into agent creation and details each section of the character sheet. Starting with agent creation is very intuitive and helps you learn the game from the player perspective. The second chapter goes into the game's mechanics and details the game system as a whole. As I stated before, the system is easy to learn and to use. The third chapter goes into combat mechanics. Combat is simple, but it is intricate enough to allow for tactics and such. I think the combat system is excellent. As opposed to some other role-playing games where combat slows everything down, the combat system really helps improvise narrative elements and helps keep the game moving quickly. The fourth chapter is about sanity. As with most Mythos games, sanity is a major part of the game. The chapter describes mental disorders that agents can develop and things that may cause an agent to begin to lose her grip of reality. The sanity rules are good and help players flesh out their agents as they change with each exposure to the unnatural. At times, sanity rolls become very numerous and can bog the game down a bit, but it's not an overly common occurrence and it's not game breaking or anything. The fifth chapter is all about dealing with the agent's life outside of Delta Green. At the end of the day, each agent has people and interests that keeps them motivated. They also have a job that pays the bills. Delta Green can conflict with all of those parts of an agent's life, and most agents are not able to find a balance, eventually losing friendships, love interests, and their jobs. The bonds mechanic and the home scenes in Delta Green give players even more ways to flesh out their agents and secretly serve the purpose of connecting a player to their agent so that when tragedy strikes, it can be even more horrific. The sixth chapter is about equipment. As Delta Green agents, players will sometimes have to use technology, vehicles, or weapons. This chapter has a good amount of things to offer players. I really like that they break down certain equipment into groups by rarity. The higher the rarity, the more favors your agent will have to call in, and the more strings they'll have to pull to persuade their contacts to provide it. For example, if an agent wants the FBI to send a helicopter to transport the team to the next crime scene, they better have a very good reason for it. I really like how this is handled. The seventh chapter is about the different federal agencies. The book does a good job of describing each agency's role in the federal government and other agencies that they interact with. It even details the potential friction each agency can have with other agencies. The fact that each agent has to be from a federal agency allows the handler to add story elements that fit into each agent's career and department. Overall, the Agent's Handbook serves as the only source book you truly need to play the game. It is as complete as it can be to get you started quickly, and gives enough information about the world of Delta Green to get handlers' wheels turning for some great stories. I highly recommend anyone who is interested in playing Delta Green to make this your very first purchase. And even though I say it's the only book you need to get started, your experience will be greatly enhanced by playing through one of the official operations from ArcDream's website and DriveThruRPG. These will help you understand the tone and pacing of a typical Delta Green scenario. Definitely expect more content for Delta Green on this channel. I do hope you found this overview helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments down below, and I'll answer them as best as I can. Until next time, this is Innkeeper Vase Odin from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk to you then.